Hey everybody, welcome to the Self-Publishing Podcast. Today is a first. It's a landmark show. We are having Mark from Kobo on, except
you can't
no longer
say that.
Mark from Kobo.
You have to say his actual last name, which is impossible to pronounce.
No, Mark. I know how to pronounce it. Lefebvre, and it's Lefebvre. I know these things.
It's got all those extra letters in it.
I speak Canadian. So anyway, we're going to be talking to Mark about sort of what that journey was like and all that stuff. And we jumped on him right away. We were like, dude, do you want to come on and talk things out? And what's interesting is, we'll get to this. I mean, Mark's here. He's being all quiet. But Sean and I had a meeting with him, and I'm like, we got a new. It's like the rogue Mark. I can just tell he's just going to start. He's no longer representing a corporation. Who knows what he's going to do?
I'm so excited.
I was just waiting. I could tell there was a vibe.
Oh, he seems very wily. Like he's been waiting years for this.
Yeah.
Free of his corporate masters and shackles.
Yeah.
Dave, what are you going to do when you're free of your corporate masters and shackles?
Sleep.
What are you going to do when you win the lottery?
Sleep.
What are you going to do when you're a six-figure author?
Sleep.
Awesome.
All right, so let's begin the show. Let's do something cools. And we told Mark that if he was going to be here from the beginning, he has to have something cool. And he was like, bring it on, bitch! I already have one. So you want to go first, there, Mark?
Yeah, I may as well warm you guys up. Thanks for having me on the show. Fuck, it's great to be here. See? No,
look at that.
Who is this? Who is this, Mark?
Wow.
My something cool is Kristen Ritter, who plays Jessica Jones.
Yeah, I love her. She was in Veronica Mars.
Breaking Bad. Like she's a great actress. I picked up an advanced reader's copy of her book Bonfire, which came out earlier in November, and I started reading it this morning, and I'm only about 12 pages into it. But my God, she is a brilliant writer. It's a thriller. I haven't even gotten to the suspenseful thrilling part, and I'm just compelled by her characters. I'm compelled by her voice. I'm drawn right into it. So my something cool is that she's not just a brilliant actress, she is a brilliant writer.
Oh, that's awesome.
When do we get a copy of this book?
It's available. I know it's published through Random House. It's available everywhere. Probably might even be on Kobo. You could find it on Amazon too if you want to get a paperback copy.
Oh, it's out now?
Yeah, it just came out. I think it was like earlier in November it was launched. So Bonfire is the name of the novel. It's her first novel. It's a thriller, and she is.
Wow, that's awesome. And she uses her real name?
Yeah, she uses her real name because I think when I was working at Kobo, we have the advanced reader shelves where these books would be shipped to us by publishers. And I was walking by and I went, Kristen Ritter, isn't that the actress? So
that's really awesome.
Book and flipped it over and went, yeah, sure enough.
That's really cool. I like her a lot. I liked her since Veronica Mars. She was. Oh, and she's in the Veronica Mars movie too, like 10 years later, however long later that was.
She was in that CBS comedy that wasn't given a chance. It was before
The Bee in Apartment 23, or the Bee. Don't trust the Bee in Apartment 23.
No, a different one.
Terrible show name.
Yeah, it was a terrible show name, but it was funny. It had James Vanderbeek in it, and playing actually
terrible stage name.
He played James Vanderbeek.
Isn't he Canadian?
Oh, Mark knows all the Canadians.
I don't know all the Canadians. There's about 6 or 7 I haven't met.
I know a guy from Canada. His name's Jay. Do you know him? He wears a purple shirt, runs real fast.
He only wears the purple shirt on Wednesdays.
He goes oot a lot.
So, she also appeared in Devil May Care. So you remember that?
Oh, that's right. She did. Oh, it's fantastic.
Her agent will be in touch with you real soon.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're
stop that.
She wasn't really in it. We would have cast her if it had been a movie when it becomes a movie. All right. Well, I have two kind of half something cool, so I figured they combine to become one something cool.
So you're like Voltron of something cool.
A little bit. Voltron's a better metaphor.
Voltron, yeah.
Yeah.
I just woke up.
So right. So the first is kind of a something. Oh, come on! Where we've been trying to order the SNES Classic for 3 or 4 days now, like Walmart.com, right at 1 p.m. And it literally, I had the whole thing queued up where the credit card information was pre-entered, and Robin had everything already. And so I'm refresh. Oh, it's available. Click. Sorry, this is out of stock. It was literally 3 to 5 seconds. So that's not a something cool. That's a something coming up.
Can I say fuck Nintendo again?
I said it. I said it earlier, and Sean is all apologist again.
Of course he is.
Really, not really. I'm just like, I only was responding because you said, I know you're an apologist for Nintendo. And that like cues me up. I have to say something.
And then my other half one, and the reason that this is a half one is that I've started watching some cool TV shows that everybody else started watching a long time ago and have already appeared as something cool.
Oh, awesome. Like what?
Well, we finally started watching Stranger Things season 1.
Oh,
right?
how is it?
Watch season 1.
So you even get to the part where that person died. Oh.
No, so that we're watching that as a family, but then Robin and I are also watching American Vandal, which Dave mentioned.
Oh, I haven't seen American Vandal yet.
It's funny. We're digging it.
Yeah, I just started yesterday or a couple days ago. My friend Lori was telling me about the show called Schitt's Creek and how funny it was, and so I watched the first couple episodes and I just didn't laugh enough. So I'm not sure I'm going to continue. Like life is too short.
Sean or Dave?
Okay, so I don't think my something cool happened today while I was sleeping.
It did not.
Boy, that's like the story of your life.
Yeah, right. It was going to be Eminem's release, which is supposed to happen today. I don't know what's going on. I've been lied to. But I
like yesterday when we talked about this, and you said it's on Friday. I said it hasn't been announced. You said I'm announcing it.
Yeah, well, Dave's not over, and it has to be live before tomorrow because tomorrow he'll be on SNL, and SNL and Apple have a deal because they always like announce the artist's album is available now, and it's usually available before, not like the day of. I
do think it should be out today. It does make sense, but. Damn it, hurry up.
All right, so my backup something cool is also a Netflix show that Johnny might see like in 3 years. The Punisher.
Is that out?
Oh, it's out. And I've watched 2 episodes so far because I couldn't sleep. And holy shit, it's awesome.
Did it just come out today?
Midnight last night.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Punisher was one of my 3 favorites growing up. I love Punisher.
Although it seems they're retconning his origin story, and I'm not sure if I like that or not. So,
well, I'll see. I thought they did a really great job in Daredevil season 2 with the
I think
actor they chose.
Switching that up. I'm not sure. Anyway,
wait, what?
Yeah, I have to go back and look. So,
okay, well, I'll check that out. But the casting on that seemed perfect, and I like the tone and everything I saw so far.
Yeah, Shane is an awesome Punisher.
He was. My something cool is the book The Circle by Dave Eggers. Did you read that, Mark?
I was reading somebody give that the worst review ever.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It doesn't quite work the way I think the author probably wants it to, and apparently the movie is pretty shitty. And I haven't seen it, but the reviews are pretty terrible. And the book that I'm reading, I'm really curious to see how it equates to the movie. I want to watch the movie, even though
I heard the movie's even worse.
Yeah. But the book itself, and I actually gave this to Johnny as something I think he should read because I think he'll like the book way more than the reviewers did, in the same way that he likes Jennifer Government and Lexicon, even though those are 3-star books. And I read it, and very much, there's a lot of Roman Sands in this book, a lot. And the way they handle the material is Roman Sands. It really feels like that. But also, I think it's sales rank, and like there's a lot of learning here. We just did a whole episode about mid-level authors and making the decision of who you want to be as an author. And one of the points that we were making is that Johnny and I very much know that we're not like super commercial writers. And so if we want to put commercial stuff out there, then we should be working with commercial writers to execute commercial ideas. And The Circle is a really interesting book because it's a really commercial idea that I think handled with a different writer could have tapped right into the zeitgeist, just like boom, and been a really explosive book, but it's not. Like it missed it. It got a little too heady. And there's just as a deconstruction, I think it's a really interesting. So if you like books with big ideas, you'll really like this book. Especially like really, it's sci-fi that could happen right now, and that's chilling, if you look at it in that way. But it's not. It's just not. It's not a Michael Crichton book. It doesn't read that way. But if Michael Crichton had the exact same outline, we would have had one of the biggest books, in a decade. And so it's just kind of interesting to look at that. And so it is my something cool because I think that there's great ideas there and it's very well written. So, I like it for that, but it really fell short of what it could be, and I'm not in Dave Eggers' head, so I don't know, but this is a good example of a traditional book that, it did decently well because it had a traditional push behind it. But if you look now, the rank's already tanking despite it having a movie. There's not much to speak of.
It's been out forever, dude.
Well, right, but I'm talking about in the millions. Like if you have a movie out and the book is good, the rank's not going to be in the millions regardless of when the book was written. Like that barely exists. So Mark's nodding along. Mark, what do you think of that?
Yeah, you know what? I agree with you. The concept was amazing. That's what compelled me to want to keep reading it. It felt a little bit flat in terms of the execution, and maybe it's because of the direction that the author took that I wasn't anticipating. But it's missing something. It's missing that big commercial. Like, okay, well now I see this, and that doesn't mean there had to be explosions. It doesn't mean that there had to be chases. It just means that there were a few things narratively that book was really missing. And if it had been an indie book, it would have totally flopped, and there wouldn't have ever been a movie. Which is my point, that indies have a different set of rules that they have to stick to than traditional publishers do. And Dave Eggers has a name. I think his first book was Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius, whenever that was, like 20 years ago. And that was really good. He has name.
My favorite title for a book.
It's a really good title. Yeah, it's a really good title. But the point is, that book would not have survived like an hour in the indie space, and it never would have been optioned. And so indies have to pay attention to that kind of narrative drive even more than regular authors do.
All right, so let's start talking to Mark, since we've done a lot. That was a lot of something cool. That was so much cool. Just a tidal wave of cool.
Something cool.
Something.
So this story begins, and this is I think this is an interesting kind of journey story, and I think that's where I want to focus here. But this does begin from, it's one of those stories that begins at the end and you go back in time with like a lost sound effect.
Whoa.
And so
we got complicated.
Like
special effects.
A couple of weeks ago, we get this email from Mark saying, "So long and thanks for all the books." Douglas Adams allusion. Don't think I didn't catch that. And I'm like, oh,
and I hate you all. He signed at the end.
He's leaving Kobo, which again, we joke about legally changing Mark's last name to from Kobo, but it also made me kind of sad because I'm like, oh, like he's our favorite, like he's, and now we're not going to have this relationship, whatever. But I just wanted to talk about that and what you've learned and where you're going and all that. Most people don't have this journey.
Yeah, just to alleviate any concern. So Christine Monroe, who is the former U.S. manager for Kobo Writing Life at Kobo, when she came back from maternity in Canada, we get free ISBNs and you get a year off for maternity leave. So you have several great benefits. But when she came back from her maternity about 2-3 months ago, we promoted her to senior manager of Kobo Writing Life. And I had originally actually hired her with the intent, knowing that she was fully capable of doing my job, of running the team, of doing all the great things. And so when she came back, I was geared up to start to pass along, delegate a lot more responsibility for the team to her. And she was taking it like she was just doing an amazing job. So as I was watching that in the previous few months, I was feeling a lot more comfortable about something I never really ever wanted to do. Is I never really wanted to leave Kobo. I loved Kobo. It was part of who I am. Working with authors, working with folks like you have been great. But I can leave feeling completely confident that Chrissy is amazing. For any of you who've had the pleasure of working with her or meeting her, she's absolutely amazing. And you're going to get to see more of her. She was the second voice of the Kobo Writing Life podcast. We're very We were very close to 100 episodes. I walked out. I think the next episode I'm still in is going to be episode 98, coming out next week. But she was the second voice, and so a lot of folks have had a chance to meet her. And the team is amazing. They're absolutely brilliant. So in terms of having people who have authors' backs, who are born with the same enthusiasm to understand what it's like to be an independent author and to work with authors, you guys still have that. So for anyone who's concerned, Kobo Writing Life was my baby. I created it. I was hired in 2011 to build a solution for authors, and it's been an absolute pleasure and joy watching it become the success that it was. I mean, 1 in every 4 books in the English language that sells on Kobo, sounds like I'm doing a sales pitch, but 1 in every 4 books that sells on Kobo in the English language is coming from Kobo Writing Life. 1 in every 5 books globally that sells on Kobo in 198 countries it sells in is coming from Kobo Writing Life. Gigantic success. And I believe I had all the right people that I hired, all the smartest, best people who have good hearts and are there for authors. So strongly encourage authors to still keep Kobo as a best friend of theirs. If Kobo was ever your best friend, don't worry. Just because I'm leaving doesn't mean I'm not still looking out for you.
So the big question then, Mark, is why? What was done? I mean, not everybody got the email. So
yeah, of course, and that was the biggest challenge, because it happened relatively quickly. That my boss and I had been having discussions for a little while. I was a corporate speaking head, but I never followed the rules. I always did my own thing. Like I basically followed the mantra that I want to do the thing that I think is great as an author, from talking to authors in the community. I'm going to do this thing, and I'll ask for permission later. So, I'm surprised they actually kept me for as long as they did. But what it came down to was having some pretty open and honest discussions with my boss, who is a senior executive at the company, and realizing that his vision and my vision, while we had the same end destination and the same end goal, we had different ways of going about it. And I would regularly go and do my own thing, and then not get in trouble for it. Now, obviously, it all worked out well, and we have a really good relationship. But we realized that perhaps there were things that we've wanted to do with Kobo Writing Life. And I'll give you an example. When I launched Kobo Writing Life in early 2012, I had a laundry list of about 30, 40 things I wanted to get done. That list has only ever gotten longer, and we've only knocked off about half a dozen of the things that I initially wanted 5 years ago. Christine's a lot more efficient. She's a lot more organized. She's a lot more put together than I am. I'm not a squirrel sort of guy, but I'm more blue sky, and I want to constantly add things to it. Not as good at getting it done on the ground and getting it done and pushing towards that. So I think she's going to be able to take a lot of those things and actually make them happen in a really, really positive way. One of the things, she's responsible for helping. I've been working with Overdrive for the library system integration for months, and it wasn't until Christine got involved in the negotiations and the discussions, and we finally nailed the 2 or 3 things that were preventing us from moving forward. So I felt like it was a good time to go, so that my baby could grow up and become something even bigger than I could ever imagine. And maybe I was holding it back in some ways, but also in some ways, Kobo was holding me back from doing the things I wanted to do. Now, I've been really, really fortunate that I've gotten to work with folks like you guys and get out in the community and be part of that. But I also recognize that when authors were asking me for advice when I was working with publishers, every single answer I gave always include Kobo in some way, shape, or form. Now, that's fine.
Right.
It's okay. But in some cases, and it's true, in some cases, the solution may not always involve Kobo. And it was, my partner Liz was at a conference with me in Calgary, and I was talking to a traditionally published author who had the rights back to his stuff. And we went out for a drink afterwards, after the session, and we were talking. And he was looking for advice, and I was giving him advice, but I was always including Kobo. And, well, what can we do? What can Kobo do with you? What can we do with here? And later on she said, he doesn't want Kobo. He wants you. He wants you to help him because you understand the industry. You've been in the industry for 30 years. Yes, there are probably some Kobo things, but that's not why he's there. He's there because he trusts you. And sort of that sitting in the back of my head thinking, am I holding myself back from things, and am I holding Kobo back? So I think it was it happened relatively quickly that Peter and I decided probably best. Chrissy's ready. Best for me to move on, step away from Kobo, and we did it relatively quickly. So I didn't have what I was doing, I was trying to compose a message really, really quickly to as many authors who automatically popped up.
The building was burning down around him. He'd set off bombs.
And I was trying to send out a message just to try to get the word out, just to say, you know what, thank you guys for everything. I'll see you as I still migrate around through writer circles. But yeah, it was, I think the timing was really, really good for Kobo, as well as for me to sort of take this next daring venture into the future.
Were you afraid, or were you, once you made up your mind, you're like, oh, this is
Mark
clearly
is
the right
never afraid. Look at him.
Yeah, I'm brave and strong. No, of course I am. I have no idea what I'm doing next, to be quite honest. I'm taking some time. It's, working 60 day-hour weeks for the last 6 years. Loved it to death. Traveled like crazy. Absolutely adored every bit of it. The one thing I absolutely hated about my job.
Having to talk to Dave sometimes.
No, I love talking to Dave. It's beautiful eyes. Like, all the things about Dave are great. But it was actually driving into Toronto from Hamilton, which is, on a good day, 45 minutes, and on a typical day, 2 hours. So that could be 2 to 4 hours out of my life every day that were missing. And so the one thing I absolutely hated about my job was that. So it was amazing that 2 Mondays ago, which was the first Monday I didn't have to go into the office or wasn't traveling for work, I giggled madly while I was listening to the traffic reports. I giggled like a child. It was absolutely ecstatic. And I realized, oh my God, on my last drive, this is the last time I have to deal with this bullshit. Like, this is amazing. Now, on the sad side, I really miss interacting with authors, but I honestly believe that's not going to change. I honestly believe, as an author myself, I can dedicate more time to writing, and I probably will still continue to interact with writers on an ongoing basis, because that's what feeds me. That's what gives me my strength, my superpowers, as it will.
So what do you think it's going to be like going back to writing? I mean, that's, you mentioned before, you haven't really been able to do basically anything. And so where do you stand on that?
Well, I've only been able to put out 2 books a year. One traditionally published, typically. Well, also one book that I've edited with Dean Wesley Smith and Christine Catherine Rush. So there's a book I edit, which is, the writers do all the work. I just pick the really good stories, and Chris is the line editor, and I do some very, very minimal developmental stuff with the writers. But most of the stories are great. I do one traditionally published book a year, and one self-published book a year. So being able to write more for myself is going to be pretty exciting. So Shayna on the Kobo Writing Life team and I are actually, we just signed a contract with my publisher to put out Macabre Montreal, true ghost stories of, so Montreal is one of the larger cities in Canada, in Quebec, and that's where she lives. So we're co-authoring that book together. So she was my first hire. And so when I was letting her know that I was leaving, I said, well, the good news is for you, I'm gone. You don't have to deal with me every day. But the bad news is you're still going to be stuck working with me on this book, at least for the next 3 or 4 months. I'm actually looking forward to that. There's been so many, the biggest challenge, and I'm sure you guys face this all the time, is the ideas never stop flowing. I just don't have time to write them all. So now I'm going to have time to write at least 1 out of every 100 ideas now, as opposed to 1 out of every 1,000 ideas.
That's good.
I wouldn't know anything about that. Too many ideas.
So,
Sean.
Yeah. Well, Dave's favorite idea is always the one that he isn't writing, and my ideas are, they get fed after midnight or wet or whatever on a regular basis.
They get wet after midnight? Wow. Special technique.
That's not what I meant that way.
No, not this time. So, Mark, you actually said the phrase, I don't know what's coming next, but let me poke that a little bit. And do you have any idea what's coming next?
I have already agreed. So, I mean, when I called up Dean and Chris from WMG Publishing, a lot of indie authors respect and follow what they're up to. And I said, listen, I'm happy to continue editing the Fiction River series with you, but I won't be there with Kobo. And I can't promise, obviously, that Kobo is going to sponsor any of it. And they said, hell no, we want you. We want you as an editor. We want you as a writer. Are you willing to come back for the anthology? said, okay. He said, and are you willing to teach for the full week at the business masterclass next year? I'm like, okay, put that in my calendar. Interestingly enough, Christine actually, because I'm still in close contact with the team. I love them to death. They're amazing people. And so there's still some things to pass off. And it's like, oh yeah, I forgot I promised this to these people. Can you make sure this happens? And she had reached out and said, well, I was going to the Superstars writing seminars that Kevin J. Anderson, Brandon Sanderson, and James Owen, and Eric Flint and Rebecca Moista run out in Colorado Springs. And she said, well, you have a really strong rapport with them. Would you be willing to go and I'll give you some information about what Kobo Writing Life's up to, and then you can do the Kobo presentation as well as the other stuff that I do at the seminar, and we'll take care of you for that. And I was like, okay. So I get to, still do some of the things I was doing, go there as an independent mind. Not that I would really change the way I shared information, because I still would never have advised authors to do something that I didn't fully believe in. So I've picked up some sort of what you might call it consulting or independent contract work to do some stuff. I went to a professional association of professional speakers in Canada. I realized I qualified as a professional member with them because of all the speaking I've done just in the last 2 years alone. And there's a few authors that I'm working with just to support them and help them out, sort of see what I can do to help take them, almost do the same sort of thing I was trying to do internally at Kobo, is, take you from the C list to B list, or take you from B to A, or whatever. And I love that. I love seeing that success. So I'm just, again, I have no idea for sure. I'm pretty sure it'll involve some of the same things I've been doing, but perhaps in a more independent and free-spirited way, with maybe a little bit more cussing. Although that never really stopped me. If you ever saw me on stage, I'll still tell the masturbation jokes and everything.
Well, did that ever, this allows you to follow your instincts in a way that you you weren't really privy to before, because even if you thought something, you always had to have that voice in the back of your head. It's throttling you, right? Am I doing right by my employers right now? And now you're the employer. And if you're an agent for somebody, then they're your employer, but also it's like what they just said. No, Mark, we want you. We're hiring you. And so if you're able to say, you know what, this is what I think is best, and they can agree or disagree with that. But at this point, your employer, if you have several different people that you're kind of agenting in this way, then your allegiance is to you and your instincts, because the most important thing isn't Kobo or your parent brand, it's you and the success that you bring to people. So it's almost like, an agent who doesn't want to sign his actor, he wants to go do some like really crappy movie because the payday's big. And the agent is like, no, that's not good. Like, it's good for right now, but that'll make your career tank, and it's not good long-term. And my instincts know, because, I saw what happened to such and such an actor when they did the exact same thing.
No, exactly. So for example, Instinct told me when you guys reached out and said, would you like to be on the SPP? I'm like, damn, I love being on SPP. Of course, that's one of the coolest things I can do, because I have been following you guys from day one and watching your amazing story arc too from the beginning. So I'm honored that you guys wanted to chat with me, even though I don't have the From Kobo attached to the end of my name anymore. Or maybe the artist formerly known as?
Yeah, I've definitely used the artist formerly known as Mark from Kobo. Okay, so hot seat time. What tidbits can you tell us about the market? Like, you've been talking to a lot of people now. I'm imagining that in this frenzied post Kobo announcement discussion, you've ended up somewhere where you're like, ooh, I know something that's kind of cool that I can tell somebody about, or something. I know there's ninja tricks out there that you can tell us.
You know what? I think a lot of it's known, and it's being kicked around the communities. Because I do pay attention and read the industry stuff. Now, and I read the industry stuff that's coming from traditional as well as from indie. Audio still. Audio right now is still the big investment, but not the big return yet. But it will get there. I just cashed a check for $6.80 from Listen Up Audio. I know, it was
look, we just had an episode about comparisonitis. Can you please not make us feel bad about?
I won't make you feel. Come on, don't be silly. That's a tiny check compared to what you guys are probably making from your audio. But I look at
$7.80.
Oh, 780. Yeah. Well, that was that was $6 and whatever American. So it was like $8 Canadian. So that was exciting. But
Oh,
I looked
see,
at that,
your numbers are off, Dave.
I look at it and I thought, okay, this is cool. I invested in this last year, and it was all the sales from this last quarter came from Hoopla. Nobody ever talks about Hoopla, right? They only talk about Audible. No, Kobo launched audio this year. They only talk about like the big known channels. And I was like, wait a second, my only income on the one audiobook that actually there's a couple more that have just come out through Findaway Voices. But the only audiobook that I've had this previous quarter, the only money I made came from a market that I never paid attention to. And so I still think that there's so many other markets that are going to continue to grow. You know, the way that people maybe ignored Kobo, and then Kobo became a pretty good thing for them. I do think the one thing I'm going to continue to pay attention to and try to hammer home is, I mean, indie authors, self-published authors are doing some brilliantly amazing things. And I still think traditional publishers are still doing things in a different realm with a different mindset. And I honestly see this Venn diagram between what traditional publishers are doing and what indie authors are doing. And I see the sweet spot. I mean, through Kobo, I had access to see, you know, the full spectrum. And what I'd love to be able to do is to help authors try to apply some of the same principles that that the big publishers are using, and then but also still employ that dynamic experimental shift, because I do believe the future of publishing will continue to be collaboration, and I do believe experimentation, strong experimentation, doing lots of things, failing at them are just we're still at the beginning. People talk about the gold, like, you know, the gold rush boom of the Kindle days, and 2011.
Yeah, it's so annoying.
You know what? That's the beginning, dude. That's just the beginning of this. It's kind of like saying, "Oh yeah, there was the internet boom," and then remember I was working for an internet company during the .com bust. I was like, well, apparently there's still people still buy stuff online. It hasn't.
They do?
Yeah, and apparently ebooks are still selling.
No.
So I mean, it's kind of like, I've been in the publishing industry long enough to see that the sales curves go up and down and up and down, and you just have to believe in what you're doing, put out great content, and the right things will happen eventually.
You always strike me as a guy who kind of knows everybody. You actually mentioned that, knowing connections and stuff. So how important do you feel that is, especially as you go back into it yourself, like kind of knowing so many of the players?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think you guys know. I mean, you guys know Christine. If not, make sure I'll introduce you guys to her. But looking at it's always the relationships, and this is the one thing you can't. Well, you can always have. There's reps you have at Amazon or whatever. But with Amazon,
hey, he said Amazon for the first time ever.
Oh my God! I was supposed to be that river place.
Oh, that's true.
We always hear the world's longest.
But I mean, you may have reps there, but that relationship, it's all about the algorithms in more places. And I think there's more and more places throughout my experience as a writer and as a retailer. It's always been about the relationships that you have with other authors, relationships that you have with industry folks, whether they're getting to know Dan and Kevin from Draft to Digital, or getting to hang out with Christine from Kobo, or getting to hang around, and the folks at Amazon are cool people. I like them. I've spent time with them. We always had a Wile E. Coyote and sheepdog sort of relationship where we would have a drink together at the bar and enjoy each other's company. But then we got at a panel and we're at each other's throats, right? Because that was the relationship we've always had. But I mean, you always respect the people that you work with in the industry, and I really think relationships is the one thing that can't be tricked in an algorithm. So the scammers, there'll be scammers who scam people via relationships, but it's really, really hard to scam a true, genuine connection that you can make with other people, which is why going to something like the Smarter Artist Summit is one of the best investments that an author can make.
I was just going to ask, what do you think?
That was almost like an ad read.
And just by the way, you talk about scamming relationships. I'm working a really long con on Dave. Just wait. No, but I mean, what are some of the best ways? I mean, yes, of course, coming to the Smarter Artist Summit. Yeah. What are the best ways to develop those relationships?
Well, I think especially for introverts, which we all are in many ways, online, being parts of communities, answering questions, helping other writers out. The one thing you guys forget, and so many of the people from the self-publishing community forget, and my eyes continually be reopened to this all the time, is there are people who are just discovering for the very first time that there are more choices for writing than just writing a book, getting an agent, and finding a publisher.
There are
more people who don't know that, right? Sorry, Dave?
When I was at my doctor's this week, he had told me before that he was wanting to write a book like a year ago or so, and I asked him how it went, and he told me that he paid some like scammy company like thousands of dollars. And I had told him, I said, email me, I'll guide you through it. I do this stuff, and I'm just surprised, like you said, that what people don't know.
Yeah, I mean, but we're in an echo chamber too, right? Like we're always looking for what's the next thing I need to do. And your poor doctor, he's probably a smart guy, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
PhD and everything. And he fell prey for these scammers. And there's more people like that who don't know what to do and don't even know the first steps than there are people. You guys are, I mean, you're in the 1 to 5% of the top echelon of what's going on in this industry. So you forget that there's so many people who are just doing it for the first time or just learning the ropes. So again, networking, whether you can get to, Smarter Artists or Superstars writing seminars or, Novelists Inc. or 20 books to 50K or any of those places where you can go and connect. I think Brian and Jim just announced they're doing the Somewhere Book Show. They're doing a similar thing. Any of those things you can get to. Even going to a NaNoWriMo local group where you can connect with other writers is amazing. Getting online, Facebook for those groups, and just paying attention. And
well, it's iterating there too, right?
Yeah.
If you can't go to the convention or whatever that you want to go to, start online. But but communicate with people in your space and become valuable to them.
And find people that give willingly and share their information. Not like I've heard horror stories of like local writers groups where writers are like just they're stuck in the old traditional model, and they shoot down any person that wants to go indie. It's like I don't know, like a bunch of angry people, mob.
But you need to hold fast to your convictions and try to find a way to share with them the opportunity that they're missing out on, rather than say, no, I'm right and you're wrong. I mean, because I've struggled with that a lot. I get to sit on both sides of that fence and try to help bring people together. But the other thing to remember, and the listeners to your show, people who are avid listeners to self-publishing podcasts or some of your other assets that you guys put out into the world, you probably know something that you could help other writers with. What great way to connect with people. As a bookseller myself, I mean, I watched so many writers rise from, unknown writer that they put out their first book, and I've been hand selling their books since the beginning, to watch them become famous. And I've always made them promise, like, please say you'll still talk to me once you're on the bestseller list or whatever. And that's just, it's a thing you can take pride in. Is I mean, you guys get the opportunity of hearing from people who listen to the stuff you were doing and were inspired by you enough to write. Again, there's probably every single person in this listening audience has something that they know about writing or publishing that they can share with someone else and help them out. And that's the best place to start when you're thinking about networking. Rather than what can I get out of it? What can I put into
it?
Always.
Karma, what can I do for you?
Exactly. Karma will be your best friend. It has for me. It doesn't matter what mistakes I've made, what weird, strange things I've done. Karma has always come back and smiled on me.
What do you think is, you're talking about the Venn diagram earlier. What is one of those things that you think that traditional publishers still do better and indie authors are really struggling with? Yeah.
Good question, Dave.
That's a great question, Dave. Apart from the obvious, which is, I mean, they have distribution into online and brick and mortar stores. So that's an obvious one.
Yes.
But the thing, pre-orders and the whole pre-launch strategy, which is not just, yes, your book is ready. Yes, you got it back from the editor. Yes, it's good to go. But does it have to go up today? And I'm seeing indie authors making some smart moves where they're taking, I've got 4 books ready, and now that the 4 books are ready, I'm going to do my release schedule. Now I'm going to plan it out, because I was talking, my something cool, Kristen Ritter's advanced reader's copy that probably arrived at Kobo 9 months ago. The book was ready 6 months ago. Now, the reason they have to do this is they have to sell it to some person sitting in New York, so they stock it at Barnes & Noble across the country. But that's the way the industry's been built. But they do some really amazing things. Now, even my traditional publisher, Dundurn, I just received today, Shane and I got a mock-up of the covers. We haven't even written the book yet. Well, actually, Shane has written 3 chapters, and I'm a deadbeat. I'll write them later on once NaNoWriMo's over. But she's already gotten some writing done. But the novel or the book's not written yet. They're already working on the cover because they're already and on the 20th, in 3 days, I have to send them sort of some more details so that the marketing team can now build the packages that they're going to use to sell these to Costco and to the chain stores, etc. It's going to be very Canadian because of Montreal, but so that's where their focus will be. So I think publishers doing the pre-launch build up, because they've had to sell to stores because of that legacy. They already have it ingrained in their DNA that this is how you release a book. It's not, okay, it's ready, let's go. It's not this premature ejaculation that independent authors are.
Oh, there you go, Kobo.
And you can quote me on that. But so that's one of the challenges. Now, that being said, publishing fast and publishing experimentally, right? Digital. The one thing big publishers don't do is they don't take advantage of the fact that it doesn't have to be 300 pages bound between 2 pieces of cloth. You guys proved it with serialization, with the weekly stories, and then putting it together, and you went through a whole bunch of iterations of that. But again, you built a gigantic fan base of people who love your stuff because you fed them the way they wanted to eat. And traditional publishers are still trying to feed the booksellers rather than the public. Indie authors are feeding the reading public directly.
When do you think that's going to change, where where the publishers are actually going? I mean, I don't mean direct to market, but the fact that they're factoring that into their decision making more.
Take a look at BookBub. BookBub's a perfect example. Indie authors built BookBub up from a place to try to sell some books, and now you're competing with major publishers who have big budgets, right? That's how they directly connect with readers. My publisher recognizes the relationship that I have with readers. Is probably why I got the contract in the first place. Not because I'm a brilliant writer, or not because the book was the best book I've ever written when I first pitched it to them, but they knew that I would have connections with the community. So it's going to get harder while it gets easier. So there's going to be more competition from smarter publishers. You look at, I'll use Bookouture as an example. They're a UK publisher, Oliver Rhodes, like relatively small house, small group of people. Kobo's Europe, the UK merchandiser is now a member of the Bookouture team. Bookouture was acquired by Hachette about a year ago. The most brilliant thing that happened is, so Oliver has great books with amazing authors like Angela Marzens and Robert Brinza, etc. And they've done some amazing things, operating very much like Sterling and Stone, right? Like putting out really, really quality content with branding and really good, strong marketing. And then they got acquired by Hachette. And now they have print distribution, which is something they could never have on their own in a really solid, scalable way. But also, Hachette was smart enough to leave Oliver in charge, to not say, oh, now we're going to up your prices to $15 for an ebook, and now we're going to do all those stupid things that we don't know how to sell ebooks because we're only focused on print books.
Right.
So what they did is they took the best of what they're doing with digital and leaving it alone, but then applying what they do really, really well with print distribution. So that kind of marriage between, I think, I think we may see more smaller independent e-houses get acquired by larger ones, but not meddle with them and screw them up. Not meddle with them and try to change them, but actually leverage them to their advantage. Gee, you know what? I ramble way too long. I'm sorry, guys.
No, you're the guest.
No, that's great stuff.
I have a question about the future of ebooks, because, like, one of the things you realize as you're in this space, and I'm sure you realize, is kids love print books. They don't give a damn about ebooks.
They don't.
So how are we ever going to get that next generation of people reading ebooks if they're not doing it already?
You guys already know this, and you've probably over the years you've said this in many ways, shapes, and forms, in beautifully subtle ways, perhaps, if you haven't come right out and say it. Storytelling is more than just a book. Storytelling is a way of life. Storytelling is, there will always be jobs for writers. I was working with the good folks, and they're in Barrie, Ontario here, One More Story Games, onemorestorygames.com, Gene Leggett. And they have very much like you have the Story Shop, which is this amazing tool for writers. And again, I was one of the first people to support that and love using the tool to build my characters and stuff like that for my books and the beats.
You should be on the show every week.
Yeah. How do you feel about Stories to Go?
Stories to Go. Oh my God, that's amazing. But they have Story Stylist, which is basically a place where you as a writer at any point in time for free can take any one of your intellectual properties and turn it into an interactive video game. And they have all the software to make it happen. Costs you nothing. And it goes into this sort of slush pool area where anyone can try it out. And then they curate and say, well, this is an amazing game. Let's work with you to make it better. And then it goes into the retail market where it's actually a moneymaker. So it's kind of like takes the best of what Wattpad does and the best of what a retailer does and merges it together. And Gene and Blair, they're just amazing people. They worked with Charlene Harris. They didn't take the Suki Stackhouse books, but they took the stuff that Charlene still had the rights to, one of her other series, the Shakespeare's Landlord, and they made it. I even got to meet an 11-year-old girl who has her own game that other people are playing.
Oh, that's awesome. What's her game about?
So, what's that? This is the Dante's not Dante's Inferno, but it's about a cat named Dante, and it's a beautiful mystery. And again, it's for intelligent video games for intelligent girls, young women. And so it's one of those amazing things. Like my son, who's big into Minecraft and playing games, is like, okay, Xander, this is what Dad and you and I are going to do on a long weekend. Next time you have a Friday off, you're going to put your ideas together and create a game, and I'll work on it with you. So think about the future. Yes, ebooks are still going to grow. Audiobooks, digital reading is still going to grow, but there are also going to be some amazing opportunities for other forms of storytelling. I think about all of the works that you guys have and all the different ways that these great stories could be shared with even more people in different formats.
We just did a podcast episode where you were actually guest star on. So if you remember that one, guys, and it was about it was framing. It was kind of a comparison. I just sort of a show about understanding where you are and where, because we've developed this whole, when I say we, I mean a community. And when I say developed, I mean, it's happened, not we've done it intentionally, but there's this whole culture of you need to be doing this, this, and this. And if you aren't, then you're failing as an author. You need to produce this many books. And if you're not, you're failing as an author. And the question came up that we couldn't answer because everybody's busy comparing themselves to other authors. And you might be able to, since you know from Kobo. I'm curious as to how things skew as far as like how many like what's the average? I know that you can't give obviously, confidential data, but like I want to know kind of what the average writer makes, or how many writers don't do much at all and they're just making a few $100 a year or something, versus, because we always hear about the really big moonshot authors, right? And then we compare ourselves to those. So I'm curious where that middle ground is for most writers.
Yeah, and I can share this only because I've already shared, in Kobo Writing Life has already shared a lot of this data publicly. So it's stuff that is available. It's out there in the market. So I'm not, there's still some sensitive information I can't talk about. But the majority of authors make less than $100 a year. Now, I also frame this with Kobo is one of 4 retailers, probably one of the smaller ones. So $100 a year means probably 10 times that on Amazon or a place like that. You know what I mean?
But even still, $1,000 a year. Right?
$1,000, and that's the majority. Now, I'd seen some industry stats that showed that the average traditionally published writer makes less than $14,000 a year. The average self-published author probably makes less than $14,000 a year. One of my biggest frustrations, and it leads to so much self-doubt and comparisonitis, is when authors compare themselves. to only the big names, to only the 6 and 7.
Oh, that was what our last episode was about.
Guys, and that's a great episode, because the reality is, I have authors.
Dave, you should catch it when you get a chance.
Apologize and say, "Oh, I only made $1,000 a month on Kobo. I'm not doing very well." I'm like, "You freaking kidding me? You're killing it. You're doing awesome." Because if you're making $1,000 on Kobo, minimum you're making $4,000 a year, and I'm positive you're making way more than that. Because if you factor in, Amazon has 10 bazillion customers, you're probably doing, even if you had a shitty cover, you're probably selling more books on Amazon, right? So I look at stuff like that, and they would apologize to me, and I go, "What are you talking about? You're doing awesome." It's like, of the 75,000 authors, like you're number 200. Like if we had a chart,
right, but they can't see. But I'm not in the top 100. That's where the success is.
And it's frustrating, because even authors who may have been like pulling in 5 or 6 figures, and it's like, "Oh, I'm not quite pulling in the same figures I was last year," but you're still making way more than a full-time person would make in an average salary today. The comparisonitis is, it affects everyone. And again, I think Joanna Penn was talking about being at Thriller Fest and saying, seeing Lee Child up on stage and going, "Yeah, but I'm not, I was only a number 1 for 2 weeks, and so-and-so was number 1 for 10 weeks. Like, so it happens to everyone, and we have to constantly remind ourselves we're way friggin' better than we believe that we are. We believe the 1-star reviews way more than we believe 100 5-star reviews. And that's a thing. And you guys do it all the time too. You guys are brilliant writers. You inspire lots of people, and you're still you're doing great. And again, I could look at the data and see how well people are doing. And you do great in different areas too, because I would argue, let's take a look at what countries are you doing well in? Go and take a look. Maybe you're selling really, really well in another country. So maybe in the US, you're not number 1, or you're not in the top 1,000, but maybe in another country, you're in the top 100. On Kobo Writing Life, whenever I got frustrated with, I only sold 3 books this month, I would go back and change my my dashboard to look at the beginning, since I started publishing in 2012.
That's smart.
Now, and I would look at the map and go, "Holy shit, I've sold in 38 different countries. This is amazing. Yeah, okay, it's a shitty November so far, but I've done really, really well." And you can't do that easily on Amazon, unfortunately, but with some of the software you have as a writer, take a look, go back at your history, look at the last 12 months and say, "Wow, people in countries I don't know anyone in. Even Mark from Canada, I don't know everyone in Canada, and people in Canada bought my book, or people in other states bought my book." So I think that's a huge challenge that indie authors have to get over, is the focus only on the bestsellers, the focus only on the ones that are killing it, and not realizing that there are more people out there like you, and you're probably more writers than you're not. Stop beating yourself up, because it's not going to help you.
See, I find that dispiriting, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Why is that dispiriting?
Because he's Dave.
No. To hear that, a lot of people aren't doing incredibly well. I mean, I wouldn't want to be content with just a few sales, because I think I'm not comparing I compare myself to other writers in one way, but not like sales wise. The only metric that really matters to me is, can I make a living at doing this? And I think for a lot of writers that are not making a living, it doesn't help them to know, a whole bunch of other people aren't making a living either.
Okay, all right. Well, yes, but this is why you should have been on the last episode, because we really we really did talk about this in detail, and it's really a matter of reframing, because if you're neither nor,
you'll never listen to that episode. That's the tragedy. Nobody wasn't on it. I'm never going to have that information.
I'm going to listen to it twice, and then I'll call Dave. We'll have a call, just you and I, and I'll give you the 10-minute version.
But isn't it true? I mean, so Mark, one of the things, now I know you'll hear it someday, Mark, but the thing that we were talking about, we were comparing it to where we are with Story Shop, which is, where we are with Story Shop, we either need to go slower or 10 times faster. But where we are right now is not going to get us to where we want to go. And that's the thing everybody needs to remember, is what you did to get here is not what you need to do to get there. And so like if Dave was solo right now and he wasn't working with Sterling and Stone, he would be in exactly this position. Do I start like do whatever I can to write more? Like imagine he had a day job and he's just kind of like trying to get the books out. He would have to make a decision. Do I write 3 times faster than I am right now, or just take the time and be okay and acknowledge that it's not a career, it's a hobby, and that's okay?
Yeah, I think so too. The other thing too is it takes a long time. It's the biggest frustration I have is the belief that, you know, with one book I can do this. It's like you as a writer, you are more likely to make more money now with all the options in front of you than you were 10 years ago as a writer or 20 years ago as a writer. And yeah, while it's frustrating and it's hard work, the reality is you have more opportunity than ever before. You have more options and more choices than ever before. So even if you're not where you need to be, even look at how you got there and what did you do? What sacrifices did you have to make? And I'm not saying you have to be a starving artist. I mean, again, I've been a writer since 1992. I still have had to rely on a day job to pay the bills because, you know, my writing income was not enough to sustain me as a full-time income.
Exactly. We have a market correction happening because it's not reality. What people have seen in the last few years is not reality. So there needs to be some shifting and adjusting. And now we're seeing what it actually should look like.
Exactly. So again, and Dave, I know you'll always find the quiet Maya. It's not dinner time yet. Sorry. I know you'll always find the children are restless in the basement here. If I pet
the dark cloud and a silver lining.
Yeah, there will always be a dark cloud. But again, I mean, I look at I have read your stuff. And I know it doesn't really mean much and it doesn't pay the bills, but I've read your stuff. And there are people who I rave to that you really need to read Crash. Like it's an amazing book. Or you really need to pick this up because I mean I enjoyed Yesterday's Gone. The 12. Oh my God, like just brilliant stuff. And again, you haven't probably, made as much money as you've wanted to off these properties, but they're still going to be there in 10 years for people to discover. You're still going to be making residual.
Dude, Dave, this is a hard conversation with Dave though, because we'll get a book bub for like Yesterday's Gone, and he'll say, "But everybody's already read it."
My God, most people haven't read it.
Right. It's a tiny thing. Michael Anderle, we were talking about this last weekend, and he was talking about all the book sales that.
Yeah, I was totally going to say this.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You started it.
Well, just all the book sales that are out there. His line has done really well. His world has done really well, and he's hit like 1% of potential audience for that.
Exactly.
So. Like when Dave says stuff like that, it just makes me shake my head. I don't know where to go with that because it's so limiting.
Look at a movie like Gone Girl. Somebody had mentioned that, like Kristen Ritter's book is the new Gone Girl. As a bookseller, I would see books and I would think this is not going to stay on the bestseller list because everyone who's coming through this bookstore has read this book. And then the movie comes out and a bazillion other people show up who've never even heard of the book who suddenly are buying it. So yeah, Michael Anderle, same example. You think everyone's already read the book. Oh, barely, man. And then the movie gets made, and then other people discover it. You're so right, Sean. So exactly dead on with that.
All right. Well, so this has been a wonderful romp through our memories of Kobo and Mark Lefebvre. By the way, sometimes you're Mark Leslie. Are you either or both? Or
I'm struggling with that right now because. I've been known as Mark Leslie on social media, so on Twitter at Mark Leslie and Instagram, etc. I've been known as Mark Lefebvre, but nobody can pronounce it, so that's why I was. So I'm in the process on my website, markleslie.ca, a complete mess, which I am in the process of. Okay, now that I've taken some time, I need to go and clean it up. I'll probably be Mark Leslie, only because it's shorter and people can spell the damn thing. But it'll probably be Mark Leslie or aka Mark Leslie Lefebvre. Who cares? Yeah, call me whatever you want. Just call me.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks so much for being on, Mark. It's always awesome to talk to you. And just looking forward to what's coming next.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much.
This is the part where Dave says,